Well, the Oscar nominations are out. There are 8 Best Picture nominees, with Roma and The Favorite leading the field. I'm here with Brent Lang, our film and media editor. I'm Owen Gleiberman, chief film critic. Brent, what was your take on the nominations?
Well, I think it's a real statement maker for Netflix. I mean, if you look at that, they scored their first Best Picture nomination for Roma, have a leading 10 nominations. You know, it's just a sign of this streaming giant and the amount of money and influence it now throws around in Hollywood.
Sometimes somebody who's predicted to get a nomination will get left out, and everyone says, oh, it's a snub. And most of the time it isn't even a snub, they just got passed over. But this morning when Bradley Cooper didn't get nominated for Best Director, I felt it kind of was a snub. And I think there was a message there. If your movie doesn't have a social message component, then you're not going to be in the running.
What you're talking about is part of the reason that Black Panther was actually able to break through today in terms of nominations.
Absolutely.
You know, first comic book movie to get a Best Picture nod. I think it's not just because it's a very well-made superhero film. It also is a film that really was able to kind of burrow into the zeitgeist in a way that a lot of these kind of spandexed adventures are not.
I mean, I would have liked to see Ryan Coogler get a nomination. I think
Michael B. Jordan. He
yeah,
was great.
Absolutely. I mean, on the other hand, you're talking about a situation where Spike Lee is getting his first Oscar nomination ever. And it feels deserved. It feels like a nomination for BlacKkKlansman, and that we acknowledge your career thing that the Oscars have always done, and good for him.
Yeah, it also feels just long overdue. I mean, it's really staggering when you look back at his credits and you see films like Malcolm X and Do the Right Thing, that these were movies that were pretty much ignored by earlier Oscar voters. Mm-hmm. And you do have to wonder if it's partly a new generation is coming in, and that the Academy's efforts to kind of diversify its ranks are paying off.
I think that's true, and I think the other thing about the Oscar nominations this morning is that you really do feel the new generation at work. Hollywood is really a franchise entertainment machine 99% of the time. But on Oscar Day, we honor these small movies, and the overlap between that and Critics' Picks, Independent Spirit Awards, etc., is becoming, I think, more and more dramatic. A pretty big omission among the nominees this year was Won't You Be My Neighbor, the documentary about Mr. Rogers that critics loved and that was a big hit, not getting a nomination in the documentary category. What was your take on that?
Yeah, that I think was actually the biggest surprise for me, because I didn't just think that Won't You Be My Neighbor would be nominated. I actually thought it was going to win, because it was sort of, optimistic. It was looking at this really beloved television icon, and it seemed like kind of an antidote to all this sort of nastiness that we have in our political culture right now. But I think what's really interesting when you look in that documentary space is just how widely seen some of these movies are. I mean, it used to be this was kind of the category where you got up, you made popcorn, you got a soda or something when they were broadcasting it. I mean, now I think people are really actually interested in the outcome of this race. A lot of people went to see RBG, a lot of people went to see Free Solo. I mean, documentaries are a really hot genre right now.
Yeah, it's true. Well, speaking of viewers at home, there's been a whole issue over the last few years of the audience for the Oscars very gradually getting smaller and smaller. Do you think the nominations this year are going to help reverse that trend at all?
I mean, I think that they're very relieved that Black Panther scored a Best Picture nomination, but no, Owen, I don't really. I mean, if you look at the ratings trend, it's a really worrisome one. I think that there were about 26.4 million viewers last year. In 2014, there were over 40 million viewers. That's a staggering loss in terms of your audience. And if you look at the movies that are being recognized, films like Roma, a black and white Spanish language film, a movie like The Favorite, which is about an obscure monarch that nobody even remembers. So I'm not sure there's a lot there for, Joe and Jane public to really get behind.
If you look at all the nominations for Roma, clearly the Academy's belief in this movie is pretty strong. I think there's a good chance that it could win. If that happens, I think you're going to see the kind of numbers for the Oscars this year that we've seen in recent years. And part of it is that I think people feel like the Oscars are not really celebrating crowd pleasers anymore. Yes, Black Panther is there as one of the nominees, but let's say it won. Let's say, the Oscars this year was one of those evenings that seemed to be a celebration of Black Panther, and I could easily envision that kind of show. I think people would turn out for that, and maybe that's something that has to be considered.
I suspect we haven't heard the last of the popular film category.